Thank you. We have an opportunity for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the committee or the commission on any matter which is not on the agenda. Do we have any hands raised?
No hands raised.
Okay. We will move along to commissioner comments. Do we have any commissioners who would like to make a comment? Mr. Martouche.
So I wrote a letter to Senator Feinstein's office about the Half Moon Bay weather buoy. Said the Half Moon Bay weather buoy has been partially inoperative for a long time. I'm requesting your assistance in getting the weather buoy repaired or replaced. The United States Coast Guard has a specialty ship that maintains California's buoys, a buoy tender. Part of the Half Moon Bay weather buoy that isn't working is the sea temp. I fished the waters of California for over 50 years. Water temperature is extremely important for recreational and commercial fishers as they run offshore in search of fish. With diesel at or above $6 a gallon, sea temps are very important to decision-making to pursue certain species of fish. Salmon season was canceled this year. Recreational fishing has been forced over 300 feet starting September 1st. Dungeness crab fishing has been severely impacted due to interaction with humpback whales. It's embarrassing to see TV reports with sea temps listed and no information for the Half Moon Bay weather buoy. I'm requesting your office to push this buoy to get back online fully functioning. Your office has been instrumental in the past in fixing this. The response I got from the senator's office is, this letter is in response to your email dated September 8th. The buoy is maintained by NOAA's National Data Buoy Center. On April 23rd, the Coast Guard received a request from NDBC to assist in recovering the buoy and its mooring. The Coast Guard cutter Alder disestablished NOAA Environmental Lighted Buoy 46012 in June of 2023. I've had a lot of response on this. People say, that's an interesting form of bureaucratese, government doublespeak. I have sent a link to John and Jim asking for a new link to be published that does give information on weather. I did send them back thank you for the update. The weather buoy is vitally important to commercial and fishing recreations 20 miles offshore and gives weather conditions at that location. Anyway, hopefully we get that shared because the people that I've shared this with, it's been tremendously important. It's horribly expensive to not have weather conditions 20 miles offshore where we now have to fish. I did have one other topic as well. Several commercial fishermen have approached me about the fact that the ice machine hasn't been working for a number of months. Without getting ice, they can't go fishing. So the fact that we have a person committed to provide ice to the harbor and they're not doing that is preventing our fishermen from being able to go out and earn a living. You don't go out and spend hours and hours in the water or a couple days without ice to keep the fish fresh. So I think it may be prudent to look at options.
Those comments. Any other commissioners that would like to make comments?
I'd like to comment. Thank you. Jackie Spear has decided to run for District 1 for the Board of Supervisors. So for those who are in District 1, which I believe is Daly City and maybe South City.
South City, I think, yeah.
I don't think you're going to get much choice on who your supervisor is because Gina Pappin has put her candidacy on hold, as has, I think her name's Emily.
Yeah, so it's Burlingame, it includes Burlingame.
And it includes Burlingame. But perhaps Jackie could help you get that buoy and weather information online, and you could make it part of her candidacy.
I didn't know if I was going to run out of time, so they do have a sail drone out there, and that's the link that I sent to John and Jim, and the sail drone is just doing a wonderful job. I just started using that, give the sea temp all the weather conditions, buoy, the wind, the swell height, period. So we're getting all the information off of the sail drone. I did request to find out whether the sail drone is moored in that position. Normally sail drones just kind of blow around on their own. So thank you for that suggestion. And I just want to see that the fishermen have options to be able to protect themselves and their safety offshore.
And the recreational folks too. This is
Absolutely.
a huge thing for a lot of people. So, thank you.
Okay, Virginia, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, so I just wanted to let everyone know that I attended the CSDA conference, and one of the sessions that I went into was about LAFCO, because I'm the LAFCO rep, one of the two for special districts in San Mateo County. And it was pretty informative, I thought, and I think the main takeaway for me is that LAFCO should be viewed as a resource, which I think could be important, rather than, you know, an agency that's going to be critical and, you know, and not as collaborative. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I know that on the horizon, it's possible that the Harbor District is going to have an MSR review, just because it's pretty standard. I mean, we're doing reviews for Burlingame and Hillsborough right now, so they're just kind of, you know, going through the cycle. But I just wanted everyone to know that just because we're being reviewed doesn't mean that it's, you know, a black mark on the Harbor District.
negative thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, so I thought that was informative. Also, there is a LAFCO meeting today, and they actually, this is the first time I'd seen it. They put in the San Mateo County Agricultural Crop Report for 2022. And I didn't bring the physical copy may be in my car, but one of the pages was about the commercial fish catch, which I thought was very interesting. And they just gave a 2022 versus 2021 number. So I'm just going to give the bottom line. They go through the different types of, you know, fish, crab, Dungeness, crab, rock, flounder, halibut, lingcod, I mean, the whole thing. So but the bottom line is the fish catch total that they came up with for 2022 was 2,084,104 pounds. That totaled to $197,074. And in 2021, the poundage was 7,730,417 pounds for a total of $966,948. So that's mainly for information, but it just kind of gives a trend of where the commercial fishing catch is based on what the Agricultural Commission says, because this is their annual agricultural crop report. So I thought that might be of interest to the board. So thank you.
Per government regulations of the Harbor District, I too attended the CSDA conference in Monterey. A number of different classes were offered. You could take random classes for 2.5 days. They were very informative. Then there was networking sessions. You meet people from other special districts and talk about problem solving ability. So I did attend as well.
Okay, thank you. George, did you have
Just another brief comment on what Commissioner Mateo had to say, other than the importance of sea temperature and the data these buoys provide. Predictive models of waves, wave heights, directions that predict what waves will be in places where you don't have gauges are dependent upon that data to calibrate these models. So the less data that you have, kind of the less accuracy you get. So it's been that Half Moon Bay buoy, that's offshore Half Moon Bay, hasn't produced wave data in over a couple of years now. It's been a while, because surfers, we're talking about recreation, surfers look at the data at all these buoys all the time also. But that's an important part, is that the predictive models don't get as accurate as they can be without that kind of data. So another element that it's important to get that stuff. So the only other thing I would have is that I think everybody is aware now that the Coastal Commission approved a permit for our dredging work.
Finally.
And I think we'll hear more about that as time comes. There's still a few more permits that have to be obtained, which are not going to be controversial ones. I believe the Corps permit. And so I'm hoping we'll hear from Brad, our contractor, in the next few months in terms of scheduling. I think we're going to do the eelgrass portion first, where they'll move some sediments over there, they'll replant the eelgrass, and then Hopefully, we can get the whole thing done by the end of next summer.
Fred's with us today. He's going to give us an update.
Okay, good,
That's
good.
on the
Oh,
agenda.
great.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Well, thank you all for the comments. We'll move on to item number D, which is the activities report. Is Jim on the Zoom link?
Is.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure.
I am.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that was loud. Sorry.
Morning, Jim.
Hi,
Good
Jim.
morning. Good morning. Nothing further to report from what's already in my manager's activity report. I too attended the CSDA conference, and it was a great networking opportunity for us. And I'm now the official president of the CSDA San Mateo chapter. So I'll be getting busy with that.
Okay. John, operations, anything you'd like to highlight in this past month?
Everything's going quite well at both harbors. 92% occupancy at Pillar Point Harbor. Staff are continuing there under the leadership of Chris Tibby and Dante Madrigal to maintain and do a lot of work in dock board replacement, getting rid of nails, et cetera, that could potentially scratch vessels. Likewise, and we did get an update on the ice machine. I spoke myself with our tenant, Keaton Canaan Properties, and he explained that due to the very poor condition of the old ice machine, they had spent over $100,000 to repair it last year, and no longer wanted to continue putting more money into the old machine. So he was able to source a totally refurbished new machine from Texas that is now food grade. They anticipate it being shipped here and installed by October 25th. They were asked to get with their vendors and give us an accurate timetable for its when it's going to be back into operation. And they came back to the general manager with that date of October 25th. Melanie's going to be updating our website with that information. Oyster Point Marina, again, everything's going quite well there under the leadership of James Smith and Jacob Walding. They've been taking apart most of the docks and finger piers on docks 1 through 6 incrementally to drain out water. Those floating timber docks had, through decades of rain, had succumbed to taking on water, lowering the freeboard. They are able to remove portions of the top layers of wood and pump out the docks, thus increasing the freeboard, but also more importantly, making the docks and finger piers much more level to where they're more safe for people to walk up and down. They're continuing to hover around 80% occupancy and just doing I think a remarkable job there. Now that the construction's complete, working with the contractors to ensure that all of their obligations with regard to metering of the electricity and utilities in general are met, which is proven challenging, but the general manager is assisting to prompt them to ensure that they are meeting their obligations to us. So that's all working out quite well. At Oyster Point Marina, James Smith and Deputy Harbor Master Evan Pemberton responded to a request for emergency assistance from over 20 kite boarders that were stranded when the winds died out in the bay. They responded immediately, and ultimately several of the persons stranded in the water and all of their equipment resulting in a letter of commendation to both of them, which I've included in the staff. Kudos to them, fine job as always. A lot of times at Oyster Point and Pillar Point, when our staff respond to emergency situations and save lives, it ends up going without notice. It's just routine for our teams. So I'll do an excellent job. I've got nothing further.
Okay, Administration and Finance, Julie.
President Zemke, Commissioners, good morning. I'd like to formally introduce our Assistant Director of Administrative Service, Rochelle Modena. She is going to be instrumental in furthering our progress, and particularly in the human resource, customer service, and budget areas. She has over 20 years of professional experience in leadership and administration in the California Community College system and nonprofit management. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in psychology and a Master's in business administration. And so Rochelle and her husband, Silvio, who has been born and raised here in Half Moon Bay, they're excited to be back in the area. And I'd like you to help me welcome Rochelle to our team.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome, Rochelle.
It's really my pleasure, and I'm really excited for all that the Harbor District is.
And in addition to that, we're investigating the possibility of implementing a more automated business process. So we'll begin working on that project and hope to have something to show you in March. The ERP cloud implementation is getting really close to being completed. We were in the front of that process. We were asked as a team to work out the bugs of the ERP cloud system by Tyler Tech, because we did such a good job in implementing the ERP system. And so that's going really well. We're getting really close to having all our paper files in the office digitized or destroyed in compliance with the records retention schedule. And so we're making some progress. Admin team's doing a fantastic job. Thank you.
Great. Okay, at this time, we'll see if there are any members of the public that wish to comment on the activities reports. Do we have any hands raised for that?
Public comment.
Okay, no comments. We'll also then open it to commissioner comments on the activities report. Commissioner
Just a quick question on the occupancy rate, 92%. That was for Pillar Point Harbor, I believe. Do you have a breakout of commercial versus recreational portions?
We can get that. Actually, Julie's team could probably work that out for us.
Has that been kind of steady? Have you been seeing a drop in one or increase in another
Over
one?
the 8 years I've been here, it's always been pretty much the same. You know, during our recreational percentage doesn't really change on ABC docks. And then and we do have a waiting list for liveaboards and for some of the more popular size 40-foot slips. And then our commercial side always remains around 90% occupied. Much higher, even up to 110% when we're rafting boats up during the crab season and higher, when the fishing seasons are opening days, etc. And depending on where the fish are.
Do you have any kind of plan in place that as situations in the future, let's say with, the fishing industry dropping, cutting back on crab season, eliminating the salmon season, do we have a plan that would then kind of allow more recreation to make up for maybe a few losses from the commercial side? Is there a way we adjust those? Or?
We don't require that recreational vessels only dock on ABC docks. In fact, we do have some recreational fishers or recreational boat users At Pillar Point Harbor in general, even recreational boats use their vessels for fishing. It's not like there's water skiing or a lot of scuba diving or anything else going on. We do have some, as you're probably aware, we do have whale watching charter vessels and sightseeing vessels. However, primarily all our boats are used for fishing. And obviously, if we have all of our spaces filled for a recreational vessel that wants to come into Pillar Point Harbor, if all of the slips of that size are filled in ABC docks, we have nothing stopping us from offering them a slip on one of the other docks. It's just more of a preference for them. Recreational boats don't have as much traffic, don't have people coming there as often to kind of keep an eye on the boats, and our ABC docks are protected by a electronic security gate. So that's where they prefer to be.
My final question on the ice machine, between now and the end of October, when the new machine gets here and is operational, do our fishermen have an opportunity to get ice? Does the current machine work, or do we have a plan where we're bringing ice in for them, or what,
The tenants out at the end of the terminus at Johnson Pier, the fish buyers, several of those have their own ice machines, but largely any of the fishing vessels are able to get on the phone and call an ice truck, and that's what they've been doing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chancarelli.
Yes, so I wanted to comment on Jim's general manager report because he left something out that I want to recognize him for. I don't know, last night, the Menlo Park Fire Protection District voted and passed a resolution to do a fire engine donation to the Maui Fire Department. And one of the logistical issues and challenges that we encountered was shipping it to Maui, right? And I just want to thank Jim, and the Harbor District was mentioned in the Fire District staff report, for connecting our fire chief at Menlo Fire with an executive at Matson who is a friend of his and with whom he's had a very strong relationship for many, many years, which goes to show you how Jim is very good at networking and putting together, making relationships. So Jim, I want to thank you for, I don't know if you can hear me, but I want to thank you for your help. We're still ironing out the logistics, but I just wanted everyone to know that our general manager, who's wonderful, had a hand in at least getting this fire engine shipped to Maui. So I'll keep y'all posted on that, but I think it's great collaboration. And I think the Maui residents and Maui Fire Department and the state of Hawaii will be very grateful for that. So Jim, thank you so much.
I'm glad it worked out.
Okay. Any other commissioners who would like to make comments on the activities reports? Okay. We will move along to the consent calendar, item number E. Are there any items that commissioners wish to pull from the consent calendar?
Can I just pull number 6?
Number 6.
I was going to ask for the same one.
Okay. We'll pull item number 6 and take that up probably place that after item number F3 before a closed session.
Oh, I would just do it before as a business, because mine's a very simple comment.
We can't hear you.
Oh, I've asked the president if he would just put it before the discussion items, because mine's a very simple comment.
Okay, we'll put it right at the beginning of item number F. Okay?
So I'll move to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item 6, which has been pulled.
I'll second.
Second. I will just note for the record, too, that I would be abstaining from the vote on item number 4, which is a special meeting, which I was not in attendance. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent calendar for items except item number 6. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Matoush?
Aye.
Commissioner Chang Crawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Slater Carter,
Yes.
Commissioner Domrat,
Aye.
President Zemke.
Aye. Okay, we will now move forward to item number F, discussion, and we will lead off with our item number 6 on the consent calendar. Virginia.
Yeah, I just pulled it off because I wanted to thank Jim and the district for getting this done. It's been a long time in coming. I think Commissioner Matoush and I, when did we work with Jim to deal with this lawsuit? I think back in 2019, something like that. So, Jim, I'm glad that this is done, and hopefully we won't have any issues again. But are there any things that, are there any problems that you foresee with the new tenants that we should be aware of? I mean, it doesn't sound like we're going to have any issues since it's basically a brand-new bathroom.
No, I don't expect any other further issues. The bathroom is fully ADA compliant at the entrance, so I'm looking forward to the new restaurants opening and being able to use the new restrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Not personally.
Are there any other comments on item number 6? I'll entertain a motion to approve item number 6 in the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve item number 6 from the consent calendar. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Chang Crawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Slater Carter,
Yes.
Commissioner Domrat,
Yes.
President Zemke,
Yes.
Commissioner Matoush.
Aye.
Okay. Moving along, slip rates, commercial fishing vessels. Mr. Pruitt, I believe this one is yours.
Good morning, and please forgive the background. I'm in a lobby, but if it gets too bad, I'll try to find a different place. But this is a continuation from last board meeting. The board members that were present asked to table it until Commissioner Matoush can come back because they valued his input. The report attaches the report from last month, and with a few different updates. The same tables are still there, but I further explain that in the second page is where I talk about the amount birth rents are for the district, and even though they form half of our revenue, or almost half our revenue, the commercial fishing industry is only 8.2% of the enterprise fund, not to 8.2 of the entire budget, but just the enterprise fund. And what we're talking here is a reduction, possible leaving it at 2.8 across the board right now, and that's what it is, or increasing the commercial discount for our discount and slip fees for commercial fishermen that are on docks A through C. Excuse me, sorry about that. Increasing the discount for commercial fishing vessels. So commercial fishing vessels already receive 5% less than what the recreational boaters pay on docks A through C. Active commercial fishing vessels receive an additional 15% on top of that 5% from what a recreational boater would pay on dock A through C. So they receive a total of 20% off already. And if we wanted to, for a 40-foot fishing vessel, it represents about going from the 476 to 452. And then the 15% drops it down to 384 a month. So a commercial fishing vessel already receives a $1,000 a year discount. And then we add on to potential board actions if the board wanted to consider this. And if we leave leave it as no action and leave the fees at an increase of 2.8%. It'll represent about $82,000. If the board wants to roll back the approval of the 2.8, they can, just leave it at 2022, 2023 rates, or they can increase the discount on top of the 20% by another 5, which would represent a total of 14,000 per year for the fleet, or 10, which would represent 28,000 per year. And as you can see, 15 and 20%. The above rates are all based on the average of a 40-foot fishing vessel. The possible motions for the board, again, if the board wishes to take no action, holding the slip fees at 2.8, the no action is needed. If the board wishes to increase the total applicable CPI to 5.6, the board would make a motion to approve the increase in slip rates and fees to reflect the consumer price index of 2022, all urban, effective January 1st, 2024, as required by Resolution 1712. And staff is directed to update and publish the rates and fees schedule to reflect the increase in this action. Or if the board would wish to roll back the 2.8% increase, the board motion would be the 2.8% increase in slip fees for commercial fishing vessels home ported in Pillar Point Harbor or Oyster Point Marina, approved by the Harbor Board on June 21st, 2023, is canceled effective January 1st, 2024, and staff is directed to update and publish rates and fees scheduled to reflect this action. And then finally, if the board wishes to increase the discount provided to commercial fishing vessels, the motion would be to approve a certain percentage discount on slip fees for active commercial fishing vessels home ported in Pillar Point Harbor or Oyster Point Marina to be effective January 1st, and staff is directed to update and publish the rates and fees as scheduled to reflect this action. And it just as a reminder, if you do take option number 4 to increase it, that would be on top of the 20% that they already received. Pending any questions, that's my report.
Okay, Jim, do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment. Oh, no, we do have Captain Smitty.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Smitty.
Pardon me. Good morning, commission members. My name is Captain William Smith. I own the CPV vessel Riptide on HDOC. My comments on this is that we are in dire need of help. We are struggling just to survive, not only just to make our birth payments, but our insurance. The price of fuel has skyrocketed. I paid $6.20 a gallon for fuel this past week. I would please ask that you either do the rollback of the 2.8% or the discount of 20%. I believe the 20% would be higher than the 2.8%. Also on this, on the report, there's an asterisk at the bottom that says active fishing vessels is a fishing vessel with landing tickets in Pillar Point Harbor. Okay, that does not include the passenger vessels, unless you're considering our landing tickets, our manifest, and our passenger fees that are being placed in this. For us, I would also ask that there be a reduction on our passenger ticket fees on this, as we're all on the brink of bankruptcy with this. With the closure of the rock fishing season on top of the salmon, this is an absolute disaster for the CPVs in the harbor. We want to continue to operate in the harbor, but we're to the point where I'm close to just walking away from my boat. And without any kind of help, we're going to be in absolute disaster. So please consider the discount of D, 20% reduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment? Hands raised.
No public comment.
Okay, I'll open it to commissioner comments. Commissioner Matoush.
So I'm in favor of holding the discount rate to 2.8, but the one thing I'm not seeing in this is there's going to be a lot of financial aid coming for the various sectors. And the one thing I'd like to say is, yeah, we gave them a break here, but I'd like to be paid back. We're an enterprise district, and I don't want to get into one of these gifts of public funds type issues. So when you get the big check for the salmon or whatever it's going to be, I'd like to see the harbor made whole on their slip rents. I'd like that to be a condition of holding these rates at whatever we decide.
So, Tom, are you suggesting that you would support?
You have to
number
talk
one?
so they can hear you in the microphone.
Are you suggesting that you would support number one, to take no action holding slip fees to 2.8% CPI?
What I'm saying is missing here in these four options is the ability, you had the discount for this amount of time, you get a settlement check, then we get made whole.
Based on option number one,
Well,
or in general?
number one has the 2.8% that we approved. Now,
Correct.
everybody else is paying 5.6. We've had public comments that saying, wait a minute, we're giving this to commercial, why aren't we giving it to recreational? Everybody's hurting, everybody's paying over $6 a gallon for fuel. If people are gonna get this discount, let's make us whole when the checks come in.
So
And
Jim,
we need a different motion.
is there a plan to be made whole for the Harbor District?
As of right now, that was not, I did consider it in working it into the staff report, but working with staff came back and said it would be extremely difficult to track each vessel and to track each check if it came in or if it did not come in. The board does have the option that when the harbor is running again with full force and the season is open, to reestablish the CPI up to the current rates or in the future rates, to recover, to bring the CPI or the birth rates up to current market value. And that's how I was looking at how we would recover the rates into the future. We just would lose out on the actual discounts that we're already providing to the commercial fishing vessels and that 2.8 discount that from the 5.6. Julie, do you have anything further to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. The motion of the board when we were implementing rates and fees was that we would increase all slip fees by 2.8%. So that includes both commercial and recreational tenants. And if we, I guess the motions would increase one or the other to go up to the 5.6%. Yeah, I just want to clarify that.
As drafted, option one would provide that no action be taken and that the board's decision to implement a 2.8% CPI for 23-24 for berth fees for both recreational and commercial fishing. So that's already been implemented and we're collecting those increased berth rents. So if the board would like to keep that at the same rate, no action's required. If the board wants to increase the CPI to the actual CPI 5.6, that's motion two. Motion 3 is, and I'm trying to do it from memory because I don't have it, but increasing it or decreasing more, or motion 4 is decreasing it altogether, or increasing it, well, in addition to what they were already receiving. So, so no, I'm not. Number 1 is no action for both. And if we increase the discount for commercial fishing vessels, the way the motion is written, recreational would stay at 2.8.
Thank you. I'd like to note in the staff report that we are still not up to the fiscal year 18-19 in birth rent. And it was, I take it back. We are a little bit over birth rent, but not much. And if you consider inflation in these last few years, we've actually fallen behind. And I appreciate the burdens on commercial fishing. Running a business right now is incredibly tough. But we are an enterprise district. We have employees, we have insurance, we have fuel fees. We have all the same to meet. I support doing nothing further than we have already done. I appreciate what Tom has said. I wish we could find a way to recoup what we've lost, or what we're not getting. But we need to keep our employees paid, keep our insurance, our fuel, and keep all the other portions of our mission statement intact. So I think what we've done is fair given the economic burdens on the fishing industry. And so again, I will just repeat, I support option 1, which is leaving it status quo.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, okay. Commissioner Amarat.
Yeah, Jim, maybe you can refresh my memory, but a few meetings ago, when we were talking about this, we talked about, I believe it was the Sonoma County applied and received a grant that would offset some of those costs for their fishermen, I believe probably at Bodega Bay. You can correct me if I'm wrong on some of those things. But in terms of recouping, like Commissioner Matthews was saying, is there any way we can apply and receive from either state or federal some kind of grant that would help us and help our fishermen with that additional percentage? Maybe it's something like we stick with alternative 1 where it is at the 2.8%, but if we do some kind of application and receive some funding, some assistance from the state or the feds, we can always refund some funding to these fishermen who had to pay that 2.8%. So there may be a win-win there if you feel that the state and or the feds would be willing to assist us a little bit with that.
I'll address that with the second question first. We did look into grants, and one of the major requirements to qualify for those grants is that you were actually fishing, and the district doesn't fish. So we weren't qualified for any relief under the declaration of the emergency for the closing of the salmon season. With respect to the Bodega Bay, you are correct. They did receive some money, but it wasn't a grant. They did not apply for the grant. It was a one-time grant given to them by, I think it was the Board of Supervisors. And it gave a discount to all the fishermen for their berth rents. So the district was still getting paid the full amount for the berth rents. The Board of Supervisors set up a fund to pay the berth rents for them. Once that money ran out, the full rate of the berth rents went back into effect.
Thank you for those corrections. So I said state and federal, but I did not mention county. So it sounded like Sonoma County, it was the county supervisors that approved that. Is there something that we can reach out to our county to help some of our fishermen? Is that something possible?
Yes, that's possible.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Matoush.
I'm going to withdraw my comments about getting paid back and made whole again. There's too many sectors to consider to track salmon, crab, rockfish, trawl, offshore, people that fish out of state. So I'm going to go back to looking at option 1 or 2.
Oh, Commissioner Chancarelli.
So I am in agreement with option number 1. But I want everyone to understand that I'm also very sensitive to the fact that this is an enterprise district. And, we need to really make some plans on how to make up the lost revenue if the commercial fishing industry continues to drop. So I'm looking at this San Mateo County Agricultural Crop Report again. And these are numbers that are old, obviously. I mean, we're in 2023. So, I don't want to say old because they're the latest numbers. But if I look at the year over year from 2022 to 2021, that decrease in just the pounds is like 267%, right? And that's just if I'm doing my math correctly. And I would say that if you look at the decrease in revenues, it's about 8%, just under 8%. And I don't know, Jim, you may know this, and we may not even have the numbers yet, but if 2023 looks worse, which it sounds like it might be, because we haven't had a salmon season and crab season, wasn't great, I think at the end of last year or the beginning of this year. Actually, I think the beginning of this year. This number of poundage could increase, and so could the decrease in the revenues. And this is just, and I'm assuming this agricultural report focuses on Pillar Point Harbor because we're the commercial fishing area here. So, in some ways I want to give relief, but I also want people to understand that we need to have a plan, like what George said earlier, to make up for lost revenue in the commercial fishing area. So I'm inclined to go with option number 1, and to keep everything the same. And I'm happy to make, we don't need do you want a motion for, I can make a motion for number 1, which is to take no action, holding slip fees to a 2.8% CPI increase. If that makes things simpler, I'll make that motion.
Okay. Is there anyone who'd like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Okay.
Discussion?
Yeah, let's have a discussion.
I don't know if I'm supposed to do that before the second motion or not, but, they're so quick on that, those first and second. I would agree with that if we can add to that the understanding that we, as the Harbor Commission and the Harbor, will pursue other avenues to get some funding back, like out of the county. And if we get that, then maybe we can provide some relief on our own to our fishermen. So we'll do our due diligence and try to pursue that. That's not promising we will, but I'd like it that if we stay, the no action one, that we take a look at getting some funding from maybe the county to help us out.
Do you want to amend that motion then?
I don't know if we need a motion.
I don't think we even need a motion.
It says we don't need any action, but I just.
Basically,
There's no action needed because it'll stay the same. But the motion, it sounds like, Jim, is still needed. Is that correct?
No.
The way I read it is do nothing.
do nothing.
Okay, that's
It's
fine.
Same.
Yes,
Do I need to?
The board made a decision on June 21st, 2023, to increase the slip rates by 2.8%. We've implemented that. If the board wants to do something other than that, either increase it or decrease it, then a motion's required. But no motion is required for no action.
Okay, so I was a little confused on here because it says motions, and that was on there, and then it says no
Yeah.
action needed, meaning you wouldn't have to do anything, but there would still be a motion.
Yeah, I could have made that clear.
Okay, no worries. So then I'll just withdraw the motion, which is fine, and you can withdraw your second.
Yeah.
Which is fine. So sorry for my misinterpretation of that, but yeah.
I would like to make a request, and I'm not looking for budget perfect numbers like we've got on so many other things, but I do want the public to understand that looking for money, looking for grants, looking for dollars from other agencies costs the district money. So we're using part of that 2.8% to try and find alternatives. And I agree with that. I think that's part of our mission. But I want people to understand that for us looking for money, it involves staff time and effort and all of that. And so we need to, in a general sense, keep the public informed of what we are doing as a district to help keep the fishing industry and the recreational boat industry and all of it, not only afloat, bad pun, but viable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is part of our mission. I agree with spending the money to do it, but we need to give ourselves and our public an understanding of what it costs us to do that, because we have a budget, and so we have to move money from here to look for more money, and that's good, but at what cost? So, because this district runs on a tight budget and a well-organized budget, and so it's not like we have a lot of spare money floating around for stuff. And maybe we can, when we're discussing the budget every month or so, just put in a note that, hey, we've spent so many staff hours, roughly, not looking for attorney accounting, looking for benefits for the public as a whole. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And just to build on that comment too, we don't have, the district operates with a pretty small staff. We don't have surplus staff time to look at this, but I think, I also understand George's comment too, and I guess what I'd like to do is at least let this be kind of a general direction to staff that, we want to be sympathetic to the needs of a fisherman, and to the extent that opportunities or options come up that might be viable within the limits of our staff time to pursue, to do that, but leave it really to the discretion of our staff
Okay.
to see what makes sense.
Concur with all those comments. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, but there is that tipping balance point that you don't want to spend a lot of money and nothing comes out of it. So maybe we can leave it at the discretion of the general manager to look at that, maybe assess how much time it may take, and see if there's value for what we would get out of it. But I do want the fishing industry here to understand that we're on their side, and we'll do what we can do to try to offset some of that cost. But all those comments are valid. We're also part of running a business, and we need to continue that. Otherwise, nothing's going to be successful. So I don't know. I guess I would recommend we leave it up to the general manager, and then he can get back. No,
I want to make a comment on that. I think it's part of our responsibility to give some direction into what we're looking for. But I do think it's the discretion of the general manager to determine how far he should investigate and do due diligence. But I do think that the general manager should know our viewpoint, and I agree with you, for him to look, and his staff to look into this. But Jim, I mean, if you think you're chasing, going down the rabbit hole, then it may not be worth that. But I do think that it's important for you and the public, and especially the commercial fishing industry, to know that we're pursuing and looking at other avenues for revenue generation. And that may come to nothing, right? But the point is that we are looking, but I don't think that, if you make the determination that you're going to hit a brick wall, then, you've done the best that you can do. That I do think is the decision and the discretion. But I think direction should be given that we would like him to look into potential revenue sources.
Okay?
Does that make sense? Did you have something to say?
No, that makes sense to me. Any
Does
other?
that make sense to you, Jim? Sorry.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Sounds like we are there. Okay, we will
So we're
take,
doing nothing.
we will take the no action.
Right, no
No
action,
action,
okay.
right, alternative. Moving on to item number F2, memorial benches. Mr. Moran, I think this is yours.
Morning, Commissioner. This agenda item is a result of a question we had last month at the board meeting, where a member of the public asked if we would allow a memorial bench for their loved one. The board then directed staff to look into potential policies and what other entities are doing. Staff found that that's not an easy question. There's a lot of pitfalls, hidden landmines in today's very challenging atmosphere with people not agreeing with statues, et cetera, pulling them down. Any type of memorialization of individuals is potentially very challenging. In addition, there are equity issues as well, where only the very wealthy can memorialize their loved one or their pet or whatever. The individuals that don't have financial resources are largely not able to take advantage of any type of memorial benches, et cetera. Several of the public entities in the Bay Area do have memorial bench programs with varying degrees of associated written policies. I've attached several to the staff report. All of the programs had a significant fee associated with allowing the ability for a memorial bench with a plaque to be purchased, ranging from $1,200 all the way up to $30,000, I found one. And the time period for that money to allow a bench memorial plaque to be displayed was between 5 and 30 years. Some also required that the person, the business, animal to be memorialized have some significant contribution to that particular park entity. Several had assigned committees that would research the candidate's history to somehow arbitrarily determine if the candidate was acceptable to be memorialized. Some had very special disqualifiers: commercial products, political parties, activist groups, or non-profit corporations involved in lobbying at any level of government, for-profit corporations, memorials containing endorsements of products or services, or otherwise that may be construed to be advertising or commercial promotion. They were all prohibited. Most considered the memorial bench fee a tax-deductible donation. The bench remained the property and maintenance responsibility of the park entity. It was the park entity's responsibility to notify the permittee at the end of the term, at which time they were given the opportunity to extend for one additional term before the bench would be open for another candidate. That requirement alone requires additional staff time and district resources. None of the memorial bench program coordinators that I contacted said they currently had any available. All indicated there were significant challenges with the programs in the modern era of easily scrutinized individuals' history. Obviously, there are many ways a candidate's history from 50 or 60 years ago, when they were younger persons before they passed on, could offend other members of the public. By allowing a person to be memorialized on public property, that public park entity could be held responsible for past deeds of the memorialized person that are now considered unsavory. It appeared that none of the memorial programs were very active any longer. Most program rules were drafted decades ago. None of the staff interviewed wished to be quoted, but all voiced significant concerns with the programs. Staff found a news article in a local newspaper, and I've added it. I quote it here saying, "Do we want plaques and memorials strewn over public parks?" It was added, "A lot of people are offended by it. They feel the reminders of other people's family and friends diminishes the feeling of freedom and peace you're supposed to have in a public park." Goes on saying, according to the commission's proposal, city parks should not be used to publicly remember someone unless there is a transcendent relationship between the park and the individual, or unless someone has made an outstanding contribution to that community. Others brought up equity concerns, as I discussed before. Only the extremely wealthy are able to memorialize their loved one because of these fees. Staff research, it does not appear that the San Mateo County Harbor District has any robust policy regarding allowance of memorial benches at present. Staff found in 2010 the fee for memorial bench was $2,500, and in 2014 the rates and fee schedule was amended to a $3,500 fee for memorial bench, with the stipulation that the candidate had to be a 5-year berth holder, or $2,500 for a fisher that was taken by the sea. And it was $500 to put a plaque on an existing bench with the same tenure stipulation. And it was an optional fee for the fisher if he was taken by the sea. Current district rates and fees do not address memorial benches. For whatever reason, probably due to these challenges, years ago, the district removed the fee for memorial benches from our rate and fee schedule, making it no longer applicable. In discussion with both harbor masters at Pillar Point and Oyster Point, we currently have no areas that are in need of additional benches or picnic tables. It would be potentially an option that we would allow some of our current benches or picnic tables to have a plaque on them. However, that can't just be easily determined because of all the challenges that I've just described. I went into this not fully understanding all of these potential challenges, but now I through the research that I've just described to the board of harbor commissioners, there are a lot of things to consider before allowing someone to be or a pet to be memorialized on our public property. So staff recommends the board choose one of the following options. Take no action. There's currently no board-approved fee for memorial benches. Therefore, no memorial benches will be approved at this time. And that is what the Director of Operations would recommend. And keeping in mind, too, that in accordance with our master plan, we are, as time and resources permit, going to be looking at a wayfinding and signage program, which will include its own policies and board direction for types and decorative new benches and signs, etc. we'll be doing that at board direction as resources become available in the future. So that'd be one potential time for us to have a professional look at all of the challenges with regard to how we would implement a policy with regard to memorial plaques in general. And then another option would be for the board today to make a motion to assign an ad hoc committee to thoroughly evaluate all potential challenges with memorial benches, host public meetings, and draft a robust, detailed policy with proposed candidate vetting and the process for that vetting, the criteria for an individual to be considered, and a fee schedule that is equitable, and then bring back to the board for full board consideration. You know, obviously it is which was brought to my attention. I had never really thought about it before, but you know, a person's loved one that brought up their grandchildren, you know, worked hard as a maid all their life. That person, because their family don't have tens of thousands of dollars to pay, that individual may not be able to be memorialized at a public property on a bench or a picnic table, whereas somebody's poodle that was very...
He's looking at my dog. He's a Bichon, by the way.
Yours isn't a poodle. I did not mention your dog.
I know.
Somebody's pet that is very wealthy, you know, could have a plaque on a bench just because they have the resources to pay for it. If our public entity doesn't vet these our policy very carefully, I guess, and taking everything into consideration. But that I'll leave it to the board to direct staff.
Okay, well, let's see. Do you have any public comment on this item?
Yes, Captain Smitty.
Okay.
Go ahead, Smitty.
Again, good morning, everyone. In regards to the benches here, one thought that has occurred to me is to make either a single bench or another memorial stand, which is similar to the sailors lost at sea, which many plaques could be placed on or attached to. It would definitely go through the proper vetting of 5-year tenants and stuff like that, such as, you know, there are definitely people in this harbor that have made this harbor. You have Michael McHenry, you have Dale Walters, Gary Christensen is in the harbor, and I am fully in support of trying to find a way to put up plaques to memorialize these people. Gary has a bench there, but Dale and Michael does not. And I would like to see the harbor address this issue going forward to memorialize the people that actually have made this harbor what it is. Thank you. Don't sound.
So thanks for the report, John. I thought it was very good, and I loved all of the supplemental information that you gave us, because I think it gave us a full picture of the challenges, right? But I hear what the public is saying as well, and I would actually be for assigning an ad hoc committee to evaluate all the potential challenge, and I would even add benefits, because there could be benefits. I don't know. We don't know, right? I think the issue is important enough. I actually got a request from someone, a member of the public, wanting to do something like that, and I forwarded it to Jim, and he responded that we're in the middle of discussing a policy, or what that policy should look like. And maybe it is do nothing, but I don't think that taking any action right now is a responsible route, just because I think there is demand, and we kind of owe it to people to understand, what it is that we would want if there is a policy, or if we think that a policy would be too burdensome. And I think that the only way to really look at this is to put together an ad hoc committee, which I'd be happy to serve on.
Excuse me, Commissioner Zemke, Fran Pollard would also like to speak.
Oh, okay, we have one more. Let's go back to public comment. Okay, and we.
Fran? Fran, you should be able to speak now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go.
We can.
All right, thank you. Well, I didn't quite hear all of that, the comments that Mr. Moran said, so I'm not sure. I hope you do continue this, because I'm wondering, are the benches that are already there grandfathered in? Are you going to remove them? What's going on? Because I have one there, and my husband served on the commission, on the Harbor Commission many years. He's the one that helped save the fishing industry at a time when it was going to, when county and Harbor District wanted to change it to a rich man's yacht club. And he helped save that industry. So I hope that remains. And I think it is, I don't see any problem with having benches in that area. And there's a lot of other things I'd like to comment on, but not now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
And just to relieve the concern maybe this individual has, since they didn't hear the whole statement, there's been no discussion at all about removing any of the current benches that have historically been at Pillar Point Harbor. The only motions that are in place now are take no action, which would be no action with the current benches, or assigning an ad hoc committee. And of course, that would all be up to the board.
Mr. Slater.
Oh, George had his hand up first.
Oh, George, you can go first then. Go ahead, George.
I concur. I think there's a lot of discussion we can do here and additional alternatives in looking at things. And the good captain was reading my mind as he was making his comment that there are things like we can have a bulletin board titled Friends of the Harbor in Memoriam or whatever, and have a list of all the people. But people have to realize these benches are a significant benefit to the public, because me with bad knees, I love sitting there. And if one of our commissioners, it was dedicated by their puppy, I will say thank you, and I'm going to sit there and enjoy my time sitting there and thank the puppy. So there is benefit to the public, and public
That's what I said,
but I think there's other things we can talk about and formulate further. It's another one of these things. How much time do you want to spend on this? Because time is money. But I would concur that we can look at it a little bit deeper.
So you would support an ad hoc committee?
Correct.
Commissioner Slater-Curd.
Well, George, you and I are in agreement. It's my observation that these benches were generous donations for a much needed public resource that serves people with physical, different abilities, the aging, all kinds of people who need a place to sit. Long-distance runners who maybe need a place to put their legs up and stretch. I mean, there's all kinds of things. It was brought up about having a bench to commemorate Bob Sens, who was a community icon. He brought us the dream machines. He got people from all over the state to come to the coast to appreciate the coast. This was when airport was actually considered itself a part of a larger community. And I have to say, I am so glad I live on the coast, where the people I know would not go, only the extremely wealthy are able to memorialize their loved ones. Fran and Larry are not extremely wealthy. They're community supporters who have worked and spent enormous amounts of time to support our community, our fishing industry, our environmental activities, to protect this from extremely big corporations and coming in to take this over. And so I support having a way to have a support or recognize people who have gone above and beyond to make this community and this district, which is county-wide, a place that serves the needs of everyone, and I think a bench does that. It may not, it may be that the fee that we were charging doesn't cover what these things cost. I know other places have had problems with brass plaques being stolen. Vandalism is an issue for a whole lot of different things, maintenance and so on. I agree, I'd like to have a committee, but I believe our district should recognize people who have done so much, who don't have all the press to celebrate them. I've been following somewhat the story on the New York City Council talking about getting rid of statues. I just think that supporting and recognizing people who have made it a point to make our world a better place is a good thing. So I look forward to having this committee and hearing about it and looking at other ways to recognize the people who have worked for our community. So thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Matoush.
Having worked at Bodega Bay Marine Laboratory for a number of years, walking into the entrance to the lab, there's a way that people can buy bricks that have their name and some, it's limited to how much you can write and so on. That I said, if we have an ad hoc committee, we could probably use that as a benchmark to see what does it cost for a brick, and we can develop our own policy.
Yeah. But the committee, the committee could explore all the options.
All the
really,
options,
at the end of the day. So
I'll
make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a
You
motion.
make a motion,
I don't-
and I'll let someone else second.
I'm not sure we need a motion, but, I am also in support of the committee. I know there's a lot of different avenues here, and I kind of identify with, I think, George's comment too, that the concept of a bench seemed to make sense because people walk on trails and say, oh, a bench, I'll sit down. Oh, thanks to Grandma so-and-so who made this possible, which is probably the reason this, and it's become more complicated as you get a trail that might be littered with benches, but I don't think we're quite there yet. But I would be in favor of establishing an ad hoc committee to do this.
Well, do we need a motion on that?
I'm not sure we do. I have the power
You have-
to
President has the power to.
establish an ad hoc committee. Virginia, sounds like you're passionate about
I am
it.
very passionate about this because I think it's we have to explore the options and also balance everything.
Right. Is
So I would
there
love to be
anyone
on
else who has a passion? If not-
I'll play with that also.
George? Okay, good. Okay, we will establish, what do you want to call this committee?
The Memorial Bench Ad Hoc Committee?
Okay.
Is that
How about memorial recognition? Let's not
Yeah.
limit it
Yeah, I
to
like that, memorial recognition.
Not
Excellent.
the
Leave it to
bench, you mean.
Catherine to give the perfect name. Memorial Recognition Ad Hoc Committee.
Okay.
And as we're writing that, John, I don't know, maybe it'll be part of the ad hoc committee's approach to take a look at the city of Pacifica has a bench program. And along that trail from Lindemar Beach, I'm sitting on that bench all the time. And, there is a little placard that somebody donated it in memoriam. I kind of recognize that and say, thank you very much. And I'll sit there for 20 minutes until I have to go to the physical therapist and get my knee worked on. But so there are doable things. I think the ad hoc committee
I
can.
attached multiple examples.
Oh, they're great.
And as you can see from those examples, and I found the rules that actually have evolved, the policy has to be very complex.
Yes.
In order to address all of the potential pitfalls. And to be clear, it is absolutely true, though, that right now, our district can afford benches. We do put a bench wherever the general manager or the public thinks they want a bench. We can put a bench there already ourselves without having to, to be, I guess, supported by members of the public. And I think it's great myself that, that we do explore it further and try to develop a policy that is equitable. And again, it may be that we end up determining that a plaque may be at the beginning of Johnson Pier to memorialize, something that's consistent with whatever is determined later to be our wayfinding and signage program, and have where we can add names to it for all of the individuals that have helped out and been a part of the district growth and fishing community, et cetera. Again, one of the biggest challenges I think with that is humans don't only do one thing. That individual that also was a great contributor to the Harbor District for his whole life, that individual may have also been a member of a very unsavory group.
Like a Republican?
That's
very challenging, potentially. So.
Right.
Well, I will add, I think that one of the missions of this district is to have people from just about everywhere come over and appreciate the ocean and our fishing industry. Benches and seating make people feel more welcome. They invite them to stay and enjoy our resources, and so.
And hopefully eat
And
at our new
hopefully anybody
restaurant.
who's a Republican was not, and it would give people a place to sit when they're buying food from our food truck concessions as well.
Picnic table also can be.
So we should consider things like group picnic tables or something. But I think because people make mistakes in their lives, we can't judge them from today's standards. And I think we should make it a point for the committee to be looking at if people are just generally good people. And I agree, if it was generally a good cat or horse or whatever, I just think that benches make people feel welcome and part of a larger community. So I support what you're doing, and thank you for taking this on, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Virginia.
Thanks. Thanks,
Okay.
Bill.
All right, I think we're done with this one. Let's move on to item number F3, Surfers Beach update. John, I believe this one is yours as well.
As the board and most of the public, I believe, are aware, for 9 years now, the San Mateo County Harbor District has been working toward the ability to remove sand from the inside the eastern outer breakwater next to the launch ramp, and sand that is accumulated due to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers design of that breakwater that prevents the sand from continuing to migrate east down the coast and replenish Surfers Beach. So Surfers Beach has become eroded to the point where it's threatened Highway 1, and the Caltrans has had to protect it with riprap, but the beach itself has completely eroded. No beach there at a high tide at all. And all of the sand that's accumulated around our launch ramp within the outer breakwater has reduced our anchorage area there, and also silted in our launch ramp multiple times, stopping the launch ramp from being able to operate, and costing the district monies to have emergency projects to dredge the launch ramp, making it operable again. We were able to, the board direction, we were able to bring on a remarkable individual, Brad Damitz, who used to work for NOAA, has some contacts with all of the entities, including the sanctuary that had previously prohibited any sort of dredge materials from being deposited within the sanctuary. Brad's been able to work remarkably well with all their teams and be able to arrange for us to be able to have a pilot program in order to ultimately move the reclaimed sand into the sanctuary area in front of Surfers Beach. Brad's here today with us to give us an update of where we are, and as George Dumrant, Commissioner Dumrant, suggested, also can you discuss about the permitting and our CDP, which we just approved. Brad, can you hear me and speak now?
I can hear you. Thanks, John. Thanks for the encouraging words. Appreciate that. Let me share my screen here. And okay, so I've got a brief presentation here just to kind of summarize some of the points that were made in detail in the memo that was attached to John's staff report. And first of all, good morning to all the commissioners and staff. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, or to be here virtually. I'm sorry I couldn't be in the room. I always try and get there when I can. So just real quickly, I'm going to go through this, and then I'm sure there's going to be some questions after. So I guess I have no preference if you want to interrupt me or just wait till the end. Either way works for me. Okay, so real quick here, I know that commissioners and staff are very familiar with the project, but in case there's anybody else listening, I'd like to kind of show this overview image that shows the harbor and then Surfers Beach over here to the right. You can see all the sand that has built up in the harbor, which would have been over on Surfers Beach working its way down the coast. A couple of real quick pictures here to kind of illustrate the two main drivers for the project. The first one is obviously extreme erosion at Surfers Beach, and this has occurred since the outer breakwaters have been built because of the changes to the sand transport patterns and wave climate and other physical conditions since the outer breakwaters were built. The other main issue that the project is going to resolve is shoaling inside the harbor. So the addition of all that sand that got trapped in the harbor that interferes with navigation. Okay, so project overview real quickly. And the project's going to involve dredging that clean sand from inside the harbor and placing it over on Surfers Beach. That's a highly simplified version of it. But what we expect is that that's going to clearly improve navigation within the outer harbor at the boat launch ramp and the anchorage throughout that whole area. It's going to improve impaired public access, not only in the harbor, but also over at Surfers Beach, which has been a big issue, safety issue among the surfing community and beachgoers. Mitigate recreational impacts that's associated with the bullet above it. Mitigate damages from coastal storms, so providing a buffer before those large waves slam right into that revetment and threaten Highway 1. and then to create new beach habitat and ecological benefits. So the important stuff up front, schedule and next steps. So we're on schedule to go out to bid late fall, probably closer to early winter timeframe, and then begin construction in late spring and early summer. George Domerat alluded to this earlier, but the eelgrass mitigation portion of the project, and I'll give more details on all of these as we go on, but that needs to happen before we start placing sand on Surfers Beach. And that kind of complicates the schedule, makes things a little more complex, but we have everything kind of on target to get through those different steps. The permitting process is nearly finished. We've done a large amount of surveys and studies and information requests that were not expected over the past 2 years. It's been a long process, but we're wrapping that up now. And then there's a whole bunch of tasks that need to happen between now and construction, and I'll go over those once we get into this presentation a bit more. So first of all, eelgrass mitigation updates. Eelgrass is and plays a lot of important roles in the ecosystem and therefore is highly protected. It's a requirement since we found eelgrass in the proposed dredging areas. The agencies and the regulations and statutes require that we have to mitigate for the damages to that eelgrass. So we have no choice on that. This process requires us to do a pre-construction survey to get an idea of measurement of how much eelgrass is there that is going to get impacted. And then we need to salvage that eelgrass from the dredging areas and transplant it into a mitigation area at the other side of the harbor. And all of this needs to happen within a window during the eelgrass growing season, which is April through October. So we can't do anything. We can't do a pre-construction survey. We can't begin the project until beginning of April at the very earliest. Again, the eelgrass mitigation process involves dredging of sediment from near the boat launch ramp and relocating that sediment over to the West Basin in an area that's not used as an anchorage. It's not as highly used area of the harbor. So moving that eelgrass to a more appropriate area where there's already other eelgrass growing healthily over there in an effort to expand that area and mitigate for the impacts in the dredging area. Important to note is that there's been significant changes consistent to our observations since the eelgrass was originally discovered in 2019 to 2023. So here's the original survey in 2019 where we initially found eelgrass growing in areas that had shoaled in over by the harbor. You can see there's two main areas over along the East Breakwater where we proposed to dredge for Surfers Beach, and then in the West Basin at that dogleg of the breakwater. So most recently, this might be a little hard to see, but you can see that it has been drastically reduced, significantly reduced in the East Basin. That's good news. That means we won't have to mitigate for as high of a volume. You can see here in this image, the dark areas are from 2019, and then the lighter areas are for 2023. And what has happened is as the waves have crashed over and that area has shoaled and more sand has been added, the eelgrass kind of has been moving its way out further into the harbor, and a lot of it got covered up over the last year from the heavy winter storms. And then this is a quick image showing in the West Basin where eelgrass has significantly increased in volume, which is a good sign for our mitigation, showing that it is a good area or indicating that it's probably a good area to mitigate for eelgrass in. So we prepared in 2020 an eelgrass mitigation plan that shows a basic concept of building out this bench to transplant more eelgrass to. And that concept involved dredging of these blue areas to make them deeper, and then filling of the brown area to make it shallower. So what you have is kind of a consistent bench that goes up to a deeper volume that can accommodate more eelgrass. So areas that were too deep before are now at the right depth, and vice versa with the shallow. Permitting and CEQA. So CEQA process is completed. We met all the requirements at the end of last year. we prepared an initial study, mitigated negative declaration, that determined the project would not cause any significant negative impacts with the mitigation measures that we are proposing. It's been a really extensive permitting process. Is one of the reasons for the long time frame and delays. You can see there's a large list of agencies that are involved. We did submit all the applications in the beginning of 2022, after many years actually of working with the agencies, doing background research, providing information. Good news, and George mentioned, I think everybody knows this already, but the Coastal Commission did approve the project at their September 2023 hearing, and we're expecting the other permits to be completed soon. The Coastal Commission is obviously a huge milestone and a big deal that we got that underway. Some of the delays have been in the permitting are because of special status species and habitats. You know, the eelgrass was a big one, but also black abalone habitat, steelhead, coho salmon, and others. And another big milestone that we just reached is that the eelgrass mitigation requirements were recently agreed upon by the agencies. That image that I showed you before that had the blue and the brown, that was the original concept. When this went into the consultation for the Army Corps permit with National Marine Fisheries Service, they had some concerns about that concept of dredging over there, and they asked to have it revised. So now we've got MTS and a team of biologists working on revising the eelgrass mitigation plan, which is not going to take long. It should be completed in the next couple of weeks, and then we can hand that off to ESA, and they can incorporate that into the engineering design plans. So right now, we've got draft final plans. Those are available online. If you go to the staff report, there's a link where you can download those. Of important note here, the eelgrass mitigation is still the old design, and that needs to be revised, but everything else, is updated. We've made a lot of changes over the years based on agency impact and stuff, but most recent is available in the staff report. And now underway, we've got technical specifications, monitoring and adaptive management plan, which are almost complete as well. And ESA's Louis White and Bob Battalio are the main engineers that are working on this project. So next steps, we need to update those plans with the updated eelgrass mitigation design and then finalize those. And we need to get an engineer's cost estimate from ESA, which will be a higher level of detail than what they provided in the past. Just real quickly, here's a few images showing the overall design. And I don't want to get into detail on these now because they're pretty technical. But I'll point out here, I mentioned that for the eelgrass mitigation area, we would be dredging material from off of the boat launch ramps. This is really good for the harbor district because that material is too silty. It's not beach compatible. It's not enough sand content, but it's perfect to be used for eelgrass substrate for eelgrass growth. So we're proposing to dredge some of this material, place it over in the West Basin, which is good for, obviously, maintenance dredging of the boat launch ramps, and it will buy the harbor district quite a few years before they'll have to do that again offshore. The beach placement design, and then there's the old eelgrass mitigation design, which is going to get updated. So funding and grants. The original cost estimate, which was a rough estimate, which had a 30% contingency, they put the Surfers Beach construction, which is the dredging and placement on Surfers Beach, at 2.9 to 3.6 million. And that depends on whether it's 75,000 cubic yards or 100,000 cubic yards. The permit applications were all for 100,000 cubic yards, which was the limit that we were kind of given as a pilot project to not exceed. We've continued to seek funding. A lot of my time working as a consultant project manager on this has been spent on applying for grants. We did have some luck, 800,000 from Division of Boating and Waterways for construction available. OPC, we got 75,000 a few years ago to help pay for the planning costs. And then in collaboration with Greater Farallones Association, we're able to get a grant that includes 125,000 that we can use to help fund some of the biological monitoring components. So, and then since 2020, we've applied for more than 10 grants. We have one right now in the hopper with NOAA, which is, fingers crossed. But to be honest, it's really hard to get funding for a project that involves maintenance dredging of a harbor, placing that on a beach. It just hasn't, it's been a little bit discouraging, but we did have some luck. Okay, and then, like I mentioned before, a number of steps that need to happen between now and construction. And these are steps that, we couldn't have done before. These require, the permitting to be at a certain level of approval in the designs. But these are all things that need to be lined up in advance of construction. The first one, which I had mentioned, was to revise those eelgrass mitigation plans and construction plans. That's a fairly minor step, and that's plans are underway for that. It's already happening. Finalizing the technical specs and engineer's cost estimate and bid document, once we have that revised eelgrass design, needs to happen. And then there's a whole slew of pre-construction surveys that are either required by permit conditions or just need to be done to finalize the plans. Those are things like we need to do an eelgrass survey in sometime beginning of April to be able to determine how much eelgrass is there that we'll need to mitigate for. And like I mentioned, in May of 2023, that volume was a lot less. So we assume that it's going to be quite a bit less than 2019. We won't know that final volume until April of this year. Black abalone was another big one. National Marine Fisheries Service is going to require that we survey all of the submerged rocks along the outer breakwater, both inside and outside of the harbor and the project areas. Bathymetry survey for the plans to be able to get an accurate. And by the way, we did some bathymetry with the 2023 eelgrass survey. And it seems that there's quite a bit of accumulation of sand next to that breakwater, and it's kind of working its way, that bench is working its way out into the middle of the harbor to the extent of, up to 3 feet of sand since 2019 in some places. So there is definitely sand accumulating in the harbor, and we've concerned that. Other things like snowy plover surveys, plant surveys, nesting birds, different requirements that are part of the permitting. Prepare and release an eelgrass mitigation RFP. So the eelgrass mitigation, so that the construction of the Surfers Beach project will go out to bid, and that will include dredging and moving of sediment over to the West Basin to create that bench to plant eelgrass into. It will include dredging in the East Basin and placing that sand over on Surfers Beach. What it won't include is having a team of biologists that can go out and salvage that eelgrass and then transplant it over in the other area. So that's going to require a separate RFP to go out. And then that would include a 5-year required monitoring as well. There's a lot of coordination that needs to happen with project partners on construction logistics. That's things like, construction staging areas, access to the site. We've applied for an encroachment permit with Caltrans. Just a lot of just minor logistics that need to be taken care of. Monitoring adaptive management plan finalized. A biological monitoring plan needs to be finalized. And then here's one I want to kind of single out here. We're required to monitor for changes from the project to the surfing condition. That's been a big deal. We've received a lot of comments throughout the planning of this project. And what we're proposing is to do something a little bit beyond what the Coastal Commission is requiring, and that would be a collaborative effort where we engage Surfrider Foundation, local surfing community, prepare some forms that they can fill out to get some objective and subjective information, the length of ride, the swell direction, size, these kind of things, to be able to kind of compile those and get an idea of how the project is affecting surf conditions. And we do expect it to improve. There may be some negative impacts in the very beginning when the sand is placed as it kind of works its, it equilibrates itself. But overall, we're expecting it to result in the improvement of surfing conditions as time goes on for the project. We need to have contracts in place for construction company So we put this out to bid, get a construction winning bid, award that contract, but then there's also some project management of physical monitoring, construction management, and permitting and environmental compliance that's going to be required as part of the implementation phase of the project. Of course, there's a lot of coordination with the contractor on the logistics of the contractor and district staff as well, and on just the logistics of how the project happens and where they stage the equipment and that kind of stuff. And a whole lot of coordination with permitting agencies, making sure that we're reporting and providing the information that they need. So, that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's a whole lot of other details in there, and I encourage you to look at the staff report, or I'm sorry, the memo that was attached to the staff report for additional details. But that's kind of the quick rapid fire version of where we're at. Still on track. Looking forward to getting everything constructed in a phased approach, beginning with the eelgrass mitigation. Get eelgrass survey completed sometime in April, revise the plans quickly, and then get the eelgrass mitigation construction underway in late spring. And then it's going to take several months to complete the whole project, including the placement of sand on Surfers Beach. That really depends on the means and methods that are going to be used by the contractor. We're expecting, suction dredge with a hydraulic pumping of sand over to that area, but there's a lot of details. How big is the pipeline? How often are they dredging? All that kind of stuff that are going to need to be worked out in advance of the project. So with that, I'm sure there's probably some questions, and I'll turn it back over to John.
At this point, I'd like to open this for public comment. Do we have any hands raised or public? No public comment. Okay. Open it for commissioner comments. George.
Brad, thank you so much for that detailed update. It's good to see we're progressing. So, real quick question. You talked about the planting season from April through October. Would we be ready to plant on 1 April, which would assume we can condition the area with the dredge material prior to that in the February timeframe? There's always a risk with a little bit of winter wave activity, but we're inside the harbor. It may be calm enough to be able to get the dredging done prior to that April planting start. Is that something you're thinking about?
Yeah, that would be great if we could do that, but it's just not possible. The problem is we need to determine how much eelgrass is going to be impacted before we start dredging. And in order to do that, we have to wait till April 1st. No dredging is going to get approved before then. The way it's going to work out is that first we're going to build that eelgrass platform that I mentioned by transporting the sediment off the launch ramp over to the West Basin. That's going to need to settle for 2 to 4 weeks to kind of, be suitable for planting those transplants in. So once that happens, they can start salvaging the eelgrass from along the breakwater and then planting it in. I think that there's a high likelihood that we could probably begin some of the dredging for Surfers Beach during that 2 to 4 weeks as that eelgrass mitigation platform settles itself in areas where there's no eelgrass. So that would be in the sandy areas next to the boat launch ramp. We could probably, but also keep in mind there's going to be some staging. They're going to need to put together the slurry pipeline for the dredging and do some preparations. It's going to be like a phased approach that's all going to happen before the end of the summer, including the build out of Surfers Beach. But it just has to go in a specific order, and it can't happen before we have that eelgrass survey, and we can't finalize the engineering and design plans until we do that eelgrass survey. So there's a few things that have to fall in place. We can't just be poised to start dredging on April 1st. Kind of long answer to your question.
No, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Brad, you and I over the years, as this was developing, always talked about what kind of opportunities we can find for the community to participate in some of this. Notably, some of the schools or the high schools may be assisting in planting some of the eelgrass that then they can call as their own little area. They can watch the growth of the eelgrass and so forth. And maybe some of the other opportunities, maybe with some of the surfers to monitor, what's happening with the beaches, to get the high school science kids in Half Moon Bay area involved in some of this. I think it's a perfect opportunity, for the science teachers to be able to use this as their classroom and teach a lot of ocean kinds of things to our kids. So I haven't given up on that idea yet. I'm just not sure how and where we are and what we can do and how to implement some of that. Maybe that's something we can continue talking about. The other thing, and this is just a statement, and every time we talk about this project, I will keep making this statement to the public. Please remember, the very first slide that Brad showed it as a pilot project. You can substitute demonstration or put pilot/demonstration. The public needs to understand that this is a demonstration of adding resiliency to the shoreline as an alternative, and that the harbor is really one of the good guys in all this because we are providing this sediment to try to ameliorate some of the issues with the erosion. So we're on the plus side of this. The other thing to remember, that being a demonstration, the monitoring is going to be ultimately very critical for the agencies to be able to review, to then use that to then allow us to do bigger things in the future in terms of a project. This is a very small demonstration. No one expects this to last a very long time. Depending on the winter environment, it could be mostly gone in 1 to 2 years. So that data and the monitoring is going to be very critical. But I want the public to continue to understand that the real solution is going to be a much bigger thing that's going to have to come down the road. And this data is going to be critical to help define what that will be. So thank you.
Yeah.
Can I respond to that real quick? George, I like the idea. I still like the idea of involving the community. The surfing monitoring program is definitely going to be one opportunity for that. You and I can put our heads together on some of the other opportunities. The eelgrass transplanting has a lot of regulations around that. They have to have a scientific collecting permit. I think we can figure out a way where we can involve some people in it, but it may not be, directly planting the eelgrass and stuff. We did have some great experiences with the West Trail, working with a teacher and her class and transplanting a lot of native plants there, and that was really successful. Those have actually established themselves. This project doesn't involve any transplanting of land plants, so there's no space for that, but let's revisit that later. And then as far as the demonstration and pilot project, yes, that is a really big deal. We expect that we can show the agencies that this has some efficacy in, addressing some of the erosion, and that it doesn't have any major significant impacts biologically or otherwise, and that, it's probably going to be worthwhile to pursue a larger project in the future. The good news is that with the Army Corps permit that we're applying for, it's a long-term, kind of ongoing permit where we're mitigating for the eelgrass up front. And then that permit will allow us for future dredging in the East Basin. Not so with the Coastal Commission, but just going through this process and establishing, all the data that we have if and when we do move on with a larger project. A lot of the things have been put in place already, so it should happen smoothly. And then, we'll get into more detail on the adaptive management and monitoring plan, but we've got some ideas for that, possibly a wave buoy out at Surfers Beach. I don't even want to get into the various details at this point because that could be another hour discussion, but you're right, we are going to need to do some monitoring, and the best we can be able to tell is how long the sand stayed on the beach. Not going to be able to trace where that sand goes and everything once it leaves the beach, but we'll be able to get a good indication of what happens when we place it.
Okay. Yep. Further comment, Commissioner
I
Slater.
think it's important that we send this report to One Shoreline. Their proposal to remove the breakwater. It occurred to me when I was reading this that the breakwater has simply changed erosion patterns. If you look at the harbor, it used to be eroding up into Princeton. And had it not been there for the last 50 years, we would probably have another 100 feet of Princeton that is commercial use underwater. But more than that, I have been looking up eelgrass, and it's fascinating as an important sea life habitat, as a nursery area for species. And if we remove the breakwater, if it is removed, all of a sudden this important and expanding habitat is going to be gone. So I think we need to keep all interested parties informed of this. I think this is I love the diagrams and the maps and so on. This is such an informative report, and I'd hate to think of other government agencies wasting money and time and important resources on something that is in and of itself established as an important resource for many species and for the community as a whole. I think this is great, and I look forward to us keeping the public informed on this. This is an example, in my opinion, of what the community working together can achieve. And I'm excited by all of this. I hope we keep, and I'm sure we will, keep good photographic records of all of this. Because it's a 9-year project.
Longer.
And yeah, I know it's longer. I know I was just reading a Barbara Vanderwerf reference that said the breakwater has been an issue of contention since it was started. And I think this is just a good project, and I'm excited that it gets to move on. I think we should put benches along by the eelgrass. Yes, like golf.
Commissioner Chancarelli.
Thanks, Brad, for such great work. A couple of things, one housekeeping item. Brad's memo is not in our packet, and it wasn't online. So I have not had a chance to see the one that he's referring to behind the staff report, unless I missed something. I just see the ESA maps, but unless Brad's memo and next steps updates memo is incorporated in the two and a half page staff report, his memo's not in our packet. So I don't know.
You didn't give me the presentation.
Okay,
This is
so
the first time
okay, so we can get a copy of this, because I think this is really good. So thank you for that, Brad. And you mentioned the surfing community, Brad. So it seems to me, and I could be wrong in my interpretation, but based on some of the Coastal Commission meeting interactions, and from what I've seen and heard from other surfers, that they may be at odds. And so I hope that when we look at the surfing community's perspective, it is a very broad community that we're looking at, because I think that while Surf Writers Foundation does do good work, there are other surfers in the community who I think warrant and deserve to have their voices heard as well, because they add a different perspective. And I think that surfing perspective has to be very, very broad. They may not be involved with surf riders. They may not have in this last Coastal Commission meeting participated, but they have been very active over the 9 years I've been involved with this on this board. And I know that they were very happy with the Coastal Commission's decision. And I think that from what I understood and from what I've heard and maybe interpreted, the Surfrider Foundation wasn't as open to what the Coastal Commission approved. So I just want to make sure that the surfing community's perspective is a very broad one when we talk with them and interact with them.
Can I respond to that real quickly?
Yes.
You are correct. There was some controversy, and I did mention Surfrider Foundation, but our plan is to engage the larger community. We know that there's might be some rifts between some of the surfing community and Surfrider Foundation. I'm not up to speed on any of that, but we do not want to alienate anyone. We're talking about having a couple of workshops that would include, everyone. This will reach out to the surf schools that operate at Surfers Beach, Brian Overfelt and the local surfing community that aren't involved in Surfrider Foundation, but also we see Surfrider Foundation as an important partner in helping to coordinate some of this as well. We don't want to leave them out. So
I'm not suggesting that, Brad.
And I totally agree. And a real quick background on that. What the Coastal Commission was going to require was just a basic, you need to take some photos and address the surfing conditions. And what we already had planned in our adaptive management plan and monitoring plan was a more kind of collaborative approach that involves forums and stuff. So I reached out to Coastal Commission staff reached out to me. They said, we have this comment. And then I gave them the information about what we were actually planning to do. So I think that addresses the concerns that Surfrider Foundation had. I think that's why it came up, is that the initial requirements didn't really address any of the plans that we already have.
Right, and so I appreciate that. And I didn't know that behind the scenes, the interaction you had. But I'm not suggesting that Surfrider Foundation shouldn't be included at all. I'm just saying that the broader surfing community, which would include Brian and Overfelt and Jeff Clark and whomever else, be included, and that their perspective is not discounted just because they're not part of an organized effort, even though they have been very organized and very vocal about their support of dredging. That's all I'm suggesting or saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I heard you.
In other words, no one group should have more importance over another because they're all using the same ocean for surfing, right? And so they're going to have very different perspectives.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Matthews.
A number of things, Brad, like some of this would just probably fall under separate permit. But for instance, some of the beach at Oyster Point was derived from various construction projects that had to move sand. And the sand, they found a way, worked together with some contractors and deposited sand at Oyster Point. I'm wondering if we can look for construction projects that have large amounts of sand to move that could be deposited on this beach. But like you say, it could have been a separate permit. Then on another topic, like Commissioner Slater Carter pointed out, since the beginning of time, there's been controversy on the breakwater. One of the things that came up when the breakwater was first being considered were breaks in the breakwater. For instance, like at both ends, one closer to Surfers Beach, one at the origin out by the cliffs underneath the radar tower. I would actually see now some breaks in the seawater to improve the vitality of the seagrass. I've been in areas where seagrass was prevalent that it was difficult to find organisms. I've been in areas of seagrass at the Channel Islands where it was exposed to unfettered sea, where you could actually see different animals while you're diving in the seagrass. Then from that, I'm also curious, is the shoaling causing or contributing to the eelgrass expansion? It seems to me that the shoaling itself is creating a negative feedback mechanism working against us. as we keep getting more rules and more deference to this seagrass creation?
Yeah. Let me start with the last one first, since that's fresh in my mind. It actually worked to our favor for the project over the past 3 years. First of all, eelgrass, the inside Pillar Point Harbor is not natural eelgrass habitat. The only reason eelgrass is growing there is because enough sand has entered the harbor and shoaled and made it shallower and shallow enough that eelgrass can grow. And what we found is that a lot of that eelgrass that did start growing along the east breakwater, since 2019, when we discovered it, has been kind of smothered. We expect that it's been smothered by some of that sand that got washed over the breakwater and shoaled there, and it's kind of moving its way out more into the harbor, but there's less of it, and it's more sporadic. So while, originally there was no eelgrass, then we got quite a bit of eelgrass. Now we have a little bit less eelgrass. None of it is a natural eelgrass habitat, but nonetheless, we do have to mitigate for it. We are addressing like that whole volume of eelgrass in the East Basin with this project. The issue did come up in the West Basin mitigation site because of the changes that we saw over the past few years. Seems like there's more sand and less mud there. It's shallower. So we did have to evaluate, whether or not the eelgrass that we transplant is going to get smothered there and, disappear. We don't think that's going to happen. We think that it's a long-term approach, and we can always even add additional sediment to it in the future to expand it. Then I'll address the one about the notches in the breakwater. That was something that the Army Corps, when they did their big feasibility study looking at the impact caused by the outer breakwater to Surfers Beach and shoaling in the harbor, they looked at some notches and they found that not to be a feasible alternative. They thought that the placement of sand on the beach at Surfers Beach, beach nourishment, is the best approach, medium-sized project. I think that as we move on, once the pilot project is over, we do need to look at other alternatives, look at the potential for some sort of sand retention at Surfers Beach, in addition to just placing the sand there in the open coast. There's other things that need to be evaluated, but for the purpose of this project, it's just simply transporting some of that sand inside the harbor over to Surfers Beach. I forget what the other one was.
That's about the same. Two are the same as shoaling causing or contributing to the eelgrass expansion. And one of the things that where I'm seeing the majority of that sand coming from in that launch ramp area, I'll tell you, from operating a boat in this harbor for 30 years, it's difficult for us to get near the breakwater on the inside edge. And I think that we're not paying enough attention to taking a lot of that sand that's accumulating coming through the breakwater into the inner harbor. And I'm telling, from running bird trips for a long time, it's difficult to get a vessel in close where we used to be able to get real close to the breakwater. And I'm not seeing a lot of sand being, not only not sand being removed there, but when I see this eelgrass mitigation there, I'm thinking, boy, that you're obstructing a little bit of navigation there.
Yeah. In other words, to use it in its full form, right?
So which area are you talking about? I think I misunderstood it in the beginning.
Yeah.
Are you talking about in the West Basin?
Bring your
By the
cursor down.
ramps?
East breakwater.
To the east.
Yeah.
To the east, so like over here?
No, down.
Yeah.
breakwater.
Yeah, to the.
Yeah, that whole
right
area.
there.
So it's like
Okay.
paralleling that entire breakwater. There's so much sand coming in there. I'm not seeing plans to actually deepen what's along that edge.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to show you the proposed dredging areas. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
So these are the proposed dredging areas for the project with the 2019 eelgrass inside. So all of this area is going to be quite a bit deeper following the
Okay.
project. I misunderstood you at first about this area. I thought you were talking about this area over by the launch ramps. Interestingly enough, there was eelgrass starting to establish itself there in 2019, and none of that is there anymore, probably because of the shoaling that's occurred since then. But yeah, for this first pilot project, this is the dredging area we're looking at. There's still going to be a heck of a lot more sand there available if we want to do a future project. We're not going to get close to all of it for this, 75, 100,000 cubic yard project. So it won't solve the problems that you're referring to, but it will certainly make it a lot better in the near term.
Well, it's also interesting that the eelgrass is non-native to the area. Now we're going to cultivate a non-native species in our harbor.
That prevents us
Yeah.
from
It's-
potentially.
It's something that grows like in, yeah, I wouldn't say it's non-native, it's native. It's just the original bathymetry of the harbor area would not have supported it because it would have been much too deep. Eelgrass is a plant that requires light. But yeah, I hear you. I mean, I make that point over and over again. This isn't even a natural eelgrass habitat. But like I said, it's less than there was in 2019, and that's a benefit to the cost of the project and planning of the project, I think, for the harbor district. Is there other? Does that get to all of your questions?
Any more questions from the commission on this?
Do we need a motion to receive this, or?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Um,
I think this has been great, and I just want to thank everyone for all the hard work.
Yeah, and just to follow up on, I think, a thought that I think Virginia had, that it would be good to at least keep the one shoreline kind of informed on, or Catherine, okay.
mentioned. I agree with you.
If staff could at least forward a copy of this for their information so that they're aware of what we're doing, because I'd hate to have them thinking along another line and not being fully aware of what we are doing.
Yeah, I can assure you that they are fully aware of the project, and they've seen the most recent. They haven't seen this version of the plans that just came out, but they've seen the plans within the past 3 or 4 months, and they've participated in a couple of agency meetings as well. So they are aware of the project for sure.
Well, just sort of also for our own, I'd say protection, but just that we would have that documented, that we are keeping them fully informed on what's going on.
I agree. I think we should keep them fully informed, because I hate to see the county and the cities wasting money.
Well, and also
And-
that goes to our motto and philosophy of collaboration, which, we're taking the high road here, and we're doing what we have always tried to do, is to keep the public informed, and they're the public, but, they're thinking, it's just one opinion, and the work that we've been doing for 9 years can't be discounted just because, they have a different way of thinking, but we appreciate their input. That's all I have to say.
Okay, I guess we've done with this one, which brings us to the end of the open session. We do have 3 items under the closed session. Do we have an estimate of how long those are going to? We have 45 minutes left to our meeting, unless we extend it.
I can make a motion to extend the meeting. Recommend that you do that.
1:30? Okay, let's, just to be safe.
I'll move to extend our meeting to 1:30.
Well,
Be safe.
Virginia
We
needs to
can do
leave.
2 o'clock, but, if we end early, we end early.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah,
do it.
2 o'clock then.
Second?
Second.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Is that Tom or George?
We both said at the same time.
Okay.
Commissioner Slater Carter?
Yes.
Amrot?
Yes.
Zemke?
Aye.
Commissioner Mathush?
Aye.
Mr. Chen Crawley?
Okay, we will now go into,
Oh, I think you need to make sure there's no public comment.
okay. Let's,
Closed session items.
right, thank you. Let's open it up to public comment.
No hands are raised.
Huh?
No hands are raised.
No hands are raised? Okay. We will now go into closed session then.
Thank you.
Okay.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Okay, we have returned.
2 seconds, hold on. Takes a minute. There you go.
We have returned from the closed session. We have no items to report, which brings us to the end of the agenda, to future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items people would like to propose or put out there?
No, but I'll move to adjourn.
Okay,
I'd like to propose that we do start discussions with the high school.
That's an agenda. Is that an agenda?
That's
item?
what I'm saying.
Okay.
That we should, I like having it on our agenda. It's part of the Coastal Commission permit. So I think we should start with the high school and maybe Coastside Land Trust. Because they have an education program for kids. And I know the person in charge.
We should vote.
so would you suggest this be kind of a broad, how to engage the community in the dredging project?
Yep.
Okay, rather than specific, highlight the high school or others?
Dredging, the monitoring,
Right, just how to engage the community on
the
the whole.
project itself.
Yeah,
For an
we
agenda.
have to vote on it, don't we?
Do we have to have an
Do we have to
emotion
vote
for an
on
agenda
this?
item? I think you just requested.
No, I don't, I think we can just say we want to have that
think it's-
discussion.
I think that the policy requires board approval to
That's-
put
That's right.
an item on the future agenda, so,
Really?
yes.
Yeah, I think, I do remember seeing that, yeah. Okay,
You're gonna-
So I make the motion that we, for a future agenda, number one, that we discuss whether we have to have the board vote on future agenda items.
well.
I think that's one agenda item I'd like for us to consider. And the other is that we start based on this dredging project, that we start our public outreach efforts as soon as possible, including working with other environmental and local agencies.
Concerning the first item, I believe that requirement is in our code of
It's a local
regulations.
policy.
Code policy, and I do remember it being in there, so I just as soon not open up a full review of the code policies, so I'd like to kind of sidestep your first suggestion and go to just the second recommendation that we put in a future agenda item for the outreach.
I would like to have a discussion on that policy. I believe it's a way of stifling the public, and I'm very concerned about our transparency. So if we don't have it as an agenda item, I'm very upset that we can't even discuss it.
So there are two motions then, right? For two
A
separate.
motion with two parts.
Well, no,
You could break it into two
I would
separate.
Sure, break it in- break it
You
into
could
two parts.
consider the two suggested future agenda items separately.
Okay.
So I would say the first one would be the community outreach with regards to dredging, to put that on the future
Sure.
agenda. Okay, so you're making that motion?
I made that motion.
I'll second that
I could,
motion.
I could say that could also just be direction to staff to ensure that, that our consultant Damitz does, as he indicated he'd be doing already, reaching out to the community with regard to the project in general, but the direction to staff is to ensure that the consultant also looks at ways to engage the public in actually helping with the monitoring, et cetera, or whatever else you want him to do. Then he would be able to, that would be the direction to staff. So we would ensure that the consultant gets that direction. Then at his next update for the project, he would be discussing this item as well.
I think that's a good idea, but I also think that this is a way of reaching out to the community who does read our agendas, just to show our interest and to invite them
Engaging.
in.
Right.
So we want, so I'm clear if this,
Right, and that agenda just gives us the opportunity to talk about this more and to talk with the
so
consultant.
would the board want, if this motion is passed, the next board meeting, having Brad Danitz come back again and talk about what his plans are for engaging the public?
Yes.
I think that's a good
Yes.
start. Because if we're going to be starting this, we need to start this project now.
No.
We got the permit, we don't need to wait on the eelgrass, there's things we can be doing now for this.
Yeah, there's a motion and a second
Part of
already.
the plan is to kind of work with the local community and see what pieces they can do and would like them to do. So there's a big planning portion there of, you know, if we're going to get to high schools, we would want high school science teachers to sit down and say, oh yeah, our students can do this or that. I mean, so there's a planning portion of that we need to start.
So rather than have that meeting now, we should probably just make the recommendation for a future agenda item.
That's what we're doing. So there's a motion and a second, and we really shouldn't be discussing the merits of this motion. The motion is to put this on next month's agenda.
Right. So can we have a vote on that?
Is there public comment?
Mr. Slater Carter?
Oh, yeah, is there public
Oh,
comment?
that's right. We have many members of the public.
Nope, there's no public comment.
Okay. Can we have a vote, please?
Mr. Slater Carter? Commissioner Donrot?
Okay.
And then you have another
You
motion.
have another motion you'd like.
I do, I make the motion that we allow board members to be able to ask for items on the agenda. I've been chair of any number of organizations in an elected capacity and appointed, and it's always been the policy that it was up to the chair, and the board policy had been if anybody asks the chair, it goes on the agenda. Doesn't have to be a long one, but if the public is interested, I realize there were problems in the past. Are we going to have that albatross around our neck and limit our availability to be a public agency? Or is it?
So you're asking for that to be placed on a future agenda.
I would like to have a discussion of that on a future agenda, yes.
Right, just, I think, I don't have that code in front of me, but I think right at this point, agenda topics can be determined by the general manager or by the president of the board.
President, well, I can pull up the policy if you give me a minute. And then also, I believe
And
the,
a board vote.
the general counsel, the general manager, and I think, just bear with me here.
Well, I tell you what, it's getting close to 1. Let's just bring this up at another time.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you're not going to make a motion right now?
No, I won't.
Okay.
I'll withdraw the.
Okay, now I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second? Yes. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, we adjourn. Have a roll call, please.
Mr. Donrot?
Yes.
Commissioner Mathush? President Zemke?
Aye.
Commissioner Changarelli?
Aye.
Mr. Slater Carter?
No.
Meeting aye.
Motion carries.
At 1:13.
I need to go back and read that code.
Recording stopped.